a kind of a double booked.
I'm back to the order on. All right.
All good.
Okay, so let me see. Folks can see this at the very least.
Technology ready?
I think so. I'll just say real quick. Well, for those in the room, Ron, I've met. Andreas, I know. Was it Brunel? What's your name, sir?
Grant.
Hi, Grant.
I literally don't throw that.
Okay, all right. I've never thrown a stone that way. Never that way. But yeah, so I'll just kick off real quick. And thanks to you joining us online tonight. There's a few of you. If at any time you can't hear us, we're trying to get better and better at this in the city, using microphones and being mindful of those online. If you can't, just raise a hand or say something and we'll recognize it and use the mic much better. And if someone asks a question here that we can't hear, I'll make sure to repeat it.
Sounds good. So I guess I'll go ahead and get us started. Just wanted to also thank you for joining us this evening, both online and then here at GCMA's. I know we all have busy schedules, but this is a really important topic, and so we're glad you're here. I know Andy did some brief introductions, but I wanted to make sure that for those of you who don't know who your elected officials are, I'm Terry, Terry Lenihan, Mayor of North Plains. In the room, we have Councilor Cameron Martinez and Councilor James Page, and then we have Council President Russ Sheldon. So, and then I do believe Councilor Beekman is on the Zoom call. So there she is. Hi, glad you could join us. Thank you very much. And then for staff, I'm sure most of you know, but Chief Axton, Andy Garner, and Bill Reed. So tonight, I think, one of our biggest objectives really is just to talk about the local option levy, hear your questions and concerns. I know I got my voters pamphlet in the mail yesterday, and I'm sure the ballots are probably in the mail today or tomorrow or this weekend. But public safety is a topic in our community that is very important to our community, especially in North Plains, because of the tight-knit nature of the community that we live in. I've lived here for almost 17 years. I know we have people in the room that have lived here for, maybe 17 seconds. But the point being is that we all care about our safety. We care about the safety of our property, our persons, our animals, our dogs, and things like that. And one thing that's super, I think, special about North Plains and being the tight-knit community that we are is that we look out for each other. And that is extremely important. And that has been a kind of an ongoing culture, I suppose, if you will, for as long as I can remember. And I know that Councilor Martinez actually grew up here, so she probably knows it better than anybody else in this room. So when crime occurs, when accidents occurs, they affect us all. And, in this day of technology and Facebook and all this Twitter and all this stuff, when there's a crime or there's an accident or something like that in North Plains, it gets talked about and it affects us all. And so, we're here tonight to really bring awareness to the need for expanded police coverage, because we don't have overnight police coverage. We want to expand our coverage. We also want to shorten any kind of response times, because as Chief Paxton will probably share with you in a little bit, priority calls, they take a 1, 2, or 3 approach. I mean, if it's a priority 1 versus a priority 2, there's a different response time. Well, as we grow, as our community grows, and as so many folks join us in this really cute, great, wonderful little town, so is the need for public services. So tonight we're hoping that we can answer your questions, bring more awareness to the local option levy that we have on the ballot in May, And I'm gonna go ahead and turn this over to Andy or G Paxton. I'm not sure who's gonna get us started, but it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I will, so folks, we have a kind of short PowerPoint presentation here that's really not meant to dominate this evening, but kind of provide a frame basically for what we're going to talk about and explain. A lot of the materials that we'll see here in slides, if you've seen one of the flyers, it's going to look similar. That's because when we file a ballot measure with the state of Oregon, there are certain things that we have to say, we have to play by the book, especially us as staff. It's not our place to be persuasive or strong on our meeting. We're here to be informative and tell you what it'll do, what it costs, things like that. So I'm Andy Varner, city manager. For those that don't know me, and this is Chief Paxton, Mayor said, and Bill Reed is our finance director. So all of us work in concert with the city council on putting the proposal together. This is the real serious discussion about a local option when we started back in 2019, but it's the first time North Plains has ever had a levy, especially on lease. The last time there was one was 2004, so it's been almost 20 years. But the city council and our budget committee several years ago started talking about enhancing public safety coverages, especially overnight, eventually scaling to 24/7 coverage. There's a lot of folks were hearing that's what the community wanted to do. But we need a sustainable funding mechanism to do so. The city, the general fund as it is would not do that without us having to make some sacrifices in other services like libraries and parks. So early last year, the council gave us direction to start studying local option, like what that would look like, what are other communities doing, and really what is the goal. Why would we want to go to voters for ask for money? It's not a fun or easy thing to do, but what is the end game? What is the goal in mind to do that? So we started doing that in earnest about a year ago. We did a community survey last year to try to get some feedback on several questions about how we're performing services in the city, whether it's with related to sidewalks or whether it's related to planning or water service delivery, but also about police coverage. We wanted to know over the next 5 years, is 24/7 coverage, is having overnight coverage a priority in this community? And 86% of the respondents said yes, that is a high priority. A lot of folks don't know too, especially when they may move here from another city, that there is no overnight coverage here in the Chief can talk a little bit later about what happens when there is none in a growing community. We put together a working group of residents to work on a levy, and those are those folks there. One is here, and they helped us through several meetings last summer, talk to neighbors, consider different options, everything ranging from different levels of a levy, different funding levels, to different kind of staffing scenarios too. So they were very informative. They had a recommendation they ultimately gave to the council at the end of last summer, as we were contemplating, do we want to put this on the November ballot? We ultimately decided not to do that because we wanted to study the issue a little bit further and actually reduce the levy amount with a similar overnight result. So we think that's a better compromise. And at any time, if you have questions, you want to stop on any slide, please do. This is meant to be a cue and be able to provide the aid. So getting into the meat of it, getting to the heart of it. Meredith said voters pamphlets are arriving, going out right now. The ballots will actually go out starting next Monday. And this board proposed $1.65 per thousand assessed property value to fund overnight police patrols and related services. So anyone's a registered voter, hopefully a registered voter have the opportunity to vote. Rob, go ahead.
So with the amount of people are in our town that are paying property tax, what is the estimated amount that the city would get?
Okay, for those online, a gentleman in the audience asked of all the, if this is passed as proposed, what's the amount of property tax we can get from this? In year one, it's about $656,000, I believe. Yep. And then it goes up through the years because assessed property values usually increase by 3%. So there's going to be a little escalation there. But of course, that isn't to pay for additional services.
Okay, so that's about what I had figured. That seems way high to me. You talk 600,000 per year and then up from that. And you're talking about possibly getting 2 more officers. That's 300,000 per officer.
Well,
And
so
how's all that money figured? Because
Yeah.
the average officer makes under 100,000.
yeah, we will get into that, definitely. And it's, I'm not going to get into all this in details of what the cost per officer is because a police department, it's not cheap. This is this is a nationally accredited and certified police force we have here.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
where 300, $600,000 is going.
Yeah. The short answer for you is because of the cost of public safety for any local jurisdiction, it can be a dominating force of all of your city spending, just because the more officers you put there with the training, the insurance, the liability, the legal costs, equipment, the cars, ammo, all of those things probably outpace any other service that we provide. And that would be the same with any jurisdiction across the nation. So public safety can escalate to be half of your entire city's budget. And that's where we are right now. The goal of this is to provide overnight coverage, but to kind of ratchet down how much that cost is. So it's not half of the city budget, it's about 33 or 34%. And you do that, and that is meant to serve other services, the library benefits. So all the kids we have and families moving in here, they benefit from that. This park is nice, that was grant funded. We do not have the resources to do this in every park. Having resources available for a Parks and Recreation Department, it's you know, part of the goal of this is not to provide overnight. We're doing that, but it's also a sustainable funding mechanism. So it doesn't, you know, it wouldn't get out of control. It's meant to say you're going to get 33% of the total city property tax, general fund resources, so everyone else can benefit from that. And that's for a growing community, you know, trying to provide services elsewhere too. But first and foremost, it's overnight police coverage. And yeah, it's expensive, but it also benefits other departments. I hope that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I just think when you put this out there to the public and vote on, you should be saying what all this is going to, because we just now discovered, and I was thinking, you know, 300,000 per officer. Well, everything, well, it's going to this and this and this, and people need to understand what all it's going to, or we may not get this passed because I'm thinking $300,000 per officer, that's kind of crazy. But you know, it sounds like you're going to do, you know, another car or two, and like I said, insurance and liability. You know, I can see where that's starting adding up.
Yeah, when that's it's very difficult to message a ballot measure and to list everything that goes into it. It's typically not what you see because then you get into confusing people sometimes more than that. But yeah, those costs aren't meant to represent one person's salary. It's everything that goes into police force and scaling up a police force. So good question. That's going to be the most common question we get, and we did a presentation to Chamber of Commerce, and you know that's what you want to know.
Give an example of how many cups we have now and how much it's costing us. Right now we have 3, and it's half the budget.
Okay, for those online, there's a question from the audience. What is current coverage? So now I'm going to turn this over to Chief Axton, and he'll talk about that and what our cost level is. Finance with finance director, but Chief Axton can talk about current coverage and what this would do if it passed.
Yeah, hello, I'm Jim Action, folks that haven't met me. Well,
I guess, we don't have 24-hour coverage anymore, that's a cat out of the bag. On that. So what is our coverage? That's really what, the question moves is that. As for the current contract right now, that the city has with the sheriff's office, right now we have 2 dedicated North Plains officers. And they basically work a swing shift from noon to 10, and that's every day. The contract guarantees that there will be an officer on in North Plains every day for those 10 hours. In addition to that, you get the chief, you get me. And I typically work 5 days a week, it's 7 to 3. So right now, that coverage really for most days is from 7 in the morning to 10 at night. And that's what the coverage is right now. So there's some gaps, obviously, that we have. The city's been super wonderful and have been paying overtime. So there's some folks in the sheriff's office that are working overtime when they sign up for it to get some overnight coverage. And that's been going on right now at the stopgap for the levy. Obviously, some of the downsides to that are if no one signs up, there's no one working at night. That's kind of how the overtime works. The sheriff's office, if it's not a mandatory shift that needs to be worked. So with the coverage we have now with the contract, what this really means is, yes, even right now, in the middle of the night, whether there's overtime or not, if there's a fight going on in the city, there will be a police officer that responds. Those are the mutual aid agreements that all these cities have within Washington County. Someone's going to respond. The real question is how much time is it going to be? Having an officer in North Plains. North Plains is a pretty large metropolis. I can get from one end of the city to the other, probably running code in literally like a minute at most. And that's literally from one side to the other, especially at night. With the sheriff's office or OSP or Hillsborough or Forest Grove that would be responding to that same fight, it's kind of that crapshoot as to where they're coming from. And that's that time. And that's really what we're trying to do is eliminate that time. In addition to that, those are those priority calls. If someone's going to respond. All the livability issues of your car got broken into or there's a loud noise, those don't get responded because they're cold calls. That's going to be the next day. So all the services that you might like a police officer respond to, whether it's, hey, you've got a suspicious person, all of that stuff kind of gets held off to the next day. One of the nice things with the contract and the sheriff's office is we try and be encompassing, and a sergeant may say, hey, let's go ahead and take care of that in North Plains. But again, that's really depending on the day, whether there's an officer nearby and what's going on in the county as to whether that sergeant is even going to ask the North Plains or the corporal to say, hey, you're right there, would you mind taking that for the city? That normally would not happen in it, like, for instance, that same service would not be provided to Hillsborough. We would never go to a noise complaint in Hillsborough. However, because we're contracted and in essence, we all try and help each other out, we get that extra service here. But again, that's not necessarily a guarantee. That North Plains officer that would be here, it makes a difference. And that's really, so what would it look like? I guess I'm blending the two on accident. So that's the coverage that we have now. Going forward, that coverage would be we'd literally be doubling the officers. If the levy passes, we'd be doubling the officers that we have in North Plains. So from 2 to 4. And that would be legitimately for the overnight coverage from 9 to 7, which mirrors the sheriff's office graveyard shift. And those would be just like the contract I was telling you about for the swing shift deputies that we have currently. It's a guaranteed service of having a deputy on at night. So you would have an officer in North Plains at night. We'd like to have the dedicated North Plains officers because they're the ones that get familiar with the community, understand exactly where people are at, what's supposed to be where, because they're dedicated to that district or that's to the city, which makes the service even better that we provide versus having someone just kind of bid in or be stuck there tonight. So that's what it would look like. And that really breaks down to on most days, as it says there, from 7 in the morning all the way through the day, the swing shift, the evening, and then back again till 7 in the morning. So on most days, you end up with close, pretty much a 24-hour service. Again, I work 5 days a week. My position is not backfilled, but with the levy passing, pretty much you would say 5 days out of the week, you're going to get 24-hour coverage. Is there fly?
Yeah.
Or I guess I should have. Is there any questions with the coverage that it is now or the coverage that it would be? I'd be happy to field any questions if you have. Yes, sir.
Maybe I'll just wait till the end, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Bill.
Hey, everyone. I'm Bill Reed, the City Finance Director. I don't get to come to a ton of these meetings because a lot of the community meetings, we don't roll out a bunch of detailed numbers. That's what they keep me around for. So as far as the levy goes, the levy as proposed and on the ballot is $1.65 per $1,000 of taxable assessed value. And if you look on your property tax bill, you can see what your taxable assessed value is under Oregon law, and what your tax bill has been. Just got done paying property taxes not terribly long ago, so that cycle starts up again next October, November. But for a North Plains resident, the average home in North Plains has a taxable assessed value of just about $261,000. It's right now technically $260,892 for a single family home. The average single family home, that's its taxable assessed value. So at $1.65, this local option levy at $1.65, the average property owner in North Plains, homeowner in North Plains, the levy would cost about $429 a year. If this were approved, or on a monthly basis, if you look at per month, that's about $36 per month to pay for the levy if approved. Any questions about that? Great.
How many residents do we have right now?
We have 3,550 residents right now.
We've got 400 coming online in the next 2 years. So I guess my big question is kind of along with the original was looking at the numbers, looking at the math. I see you mentioned 615,000 a year. The 3,500 people times 29.
Well, that's per home. They have an average like about 3 people per home.
Bill, can you repeat the question or with the gist of, yeah.
Sure, no problem. So we had a question in the audience for folks who are zooming into this. We had the question, how many people are living in North Plains? And then given the information that we just shared about average taxable assessed value and how much it would cost the average homeowner, how does that math reconcile? And so, okay, so to answer your question, there are roughly 1,500 homes in North Plains right now. So that's where the math comes from. It's not on a per person basis, it's on a per tax account basis.
So unfortunately, like you mentioned, you have limited what you can put out in the voter pamphlet. I got mine like everybody else a day or two ago, and very vague, and I'm sure that everybody is punching in their own numbers, trying to figure out, how much money this is bringing in. From what's in the voter pamphlet now, is a big question mark.
So what would be good is tell us how much the current cost is for our officers we have now. That would be good. It would be a huge number. Because now, like, each officer gets paid $8 a year. That's how it is.
Absolutely.
$550,000 for what we have. So definitely that's going to be
So, I can,
Well, yeah, I think it's also worth noting that the projection of the revenue that's shown, it's accounting for all the new homes too. It's meeting with the developer, meeting with Lennar, the home builder. It's rolling into how many homes were projected to be built each year too. So it's really the starting base for this, because revenue wouldn't be received until later on. The starting base for this isn't the current home count. It's projecting out how many we're expecting with Lennar. So if you see revenue growing, it's not because of 1,500 homes. It's because of 1,600 and then 1,700 and all those things. But just wanted to clarify that. Bill, go ahead. Sorry.
so, Council Page, mentioned it would be good to clarify what the current cost is. This current contract with Washington County Sheriff's Office, 12-month period is $680,000 for all law enforcement services for the city of North Plains. So that includes everything from staff time, from law enforcement time, people here, all of their equipment, insurance, all of that. For this fiscal year, as Chief Axton mentioned, there has been demand by residents to see more attempt at some type of overnight coverage. So the city has authorized paying the overtime that Chief Paxton mentioned. And we're looking at closing out fiscal year 23 end of June, probably about $115,000 in total cost over kind of what the stated contract amount is. So we're going to come in close to about $800,000 for the current staffing level, plus whatever overtime officers sign up to occasionally get some kind of middle of the night coverage locally. So that's what we're looking at, is anywhere from $680,000 for current staffing. But if we add overtime occasionally when we can get it, pushing $800,000 a year.
And those numbers may sound big, but put it into perspective, the total probably high, all the money we have coming out, money we have going out to support us. That's what happened.
Well-
Do you know what the cost for police coverage was in 2000, prior to 2017?
We do.
Yes, gentleman asked what was the cost of police service prior to 2017? I don't have that off the top of my head, but it was the same service level as we have now, and it was only turning up. Doing the contract actually saved us money. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest cost factors in that is going to be building our own evidence storage room, which you need climate control. It has to be certified. It's another annex, basically, we'd be adding on to City Hall, which is 80 years old. And records management. It's got to be meticulous. You'd have to hire someone to be an administrative records analyst. Those are services that are part of the contract that we get with Washington County. Previously, 2017, we had a partnership with Hillsborough, City of Hillsborough. They were providing that service for us. When they said, we don't want to do that anymore, that's when we said, okay, we ran a lot of numbers, in the 9 months prior to doing this partnership. And it was just, it didn't take long in the math exercise to figure this would be the cheaper route. The harder thing for the city council then to consider, and I think residents, was what kind of service are we going to get? Like, are we going to be left in the, what is North Plains to Washington County? And it's turned out they provide, I think, exceptional service. Again, there's only 4 nationally accredited police departments in the state, and this is one of them in Washington County. So we get a lot of that training. In addition to lumped in all of this is, your bullets, your ammo, your equipment, the computers, the cars, and everything. It's the training that comes with that. This day and age, we see a lot of police incidents, and frankly, I sleep better knowing that I'm not going to get called because something crazy is happening here, because these guys and gals are trained really well. So sorry about the long answer there, but the trend in that direction was only going up. And so the financial calculation was pretty easy for the council to make. And it was really about the service.
Yeah, I can talk about that. I don't know the exact numbers, that was 7 years ago.
Councilor Page.
The numbers were actually shocking. Well, we had the same amount of police officers, but you got to figure with time off, training, for jury duty, for being sick, vacation, all those stuff. We're getting about 70% of their actual time, right? So we would have one officer, we'd only get 70% of the actual hours. Maybe even less with the court time and such. So the money we're spending was more than we're spending now, and we're getting less service. By contracting with Washington County, we were able to get the hours locked in. So they provide us hours, they cover training. That's why it's, you see that cost. And also Hillsborough no longer wanted to cover. They're trying to cut costs too, right? So Hillsborough no longer wanted to cover evidence storage and all that stuff. So you have to hire another officer that's not sworn just to stand guard with evidence. And we had to have another evidence building, and we're looking at going to like $1.2 million just to maintain what we had. So by going to Washington County, we went down to 458,000 or something like that. I don't know what it was. It was much lower, and we got a better amount of service and more actual hours out of it. So that's why we went that route. There's a bunch of numbers shop. That's why I wanted to make sure we put on the ballots, because see, people want more police. Oh, we want more police all the time, everywhere. That's great. Very expensive. So you want to make sure you put on the ballot that you guys vote for it, because our taxes cannot cover it. Let me have you guys do that.
So, and to add on to that, from 2017 to now, so I looked it up, our population in this town has doubled since 2017. So aren't we bringing in twice as much revenue?
Good question from the same gentleman in the audience. He's asking good questions. If your population doubles, wouldn't your revenue double? Is that, or you would expect a revenue increase to cover that service?
Especially with more, most of these newer homes or more expensive homes, which means even more revenue than the homes that are currently here.
Mm-hmm. Good question. I'll take an initial shot at it, then I'll hand it over to Bill, who studies this stuff for a living. The quick and dirty answer is the assessed value of a home is only going to raise by 3% per year. That's measure 50. That's an Oregon state law. That's passed, adopted by the voters. Our costs exceed that, especially in a year like the last couple of years. They could go by 6%, could be 8%. Projects like this go up 10%, price of concrete, whatever it is. So the costs outstrip that. So that's one. It's the real cost of a service may go up, may exceed the 3% that only we can get in property tax values going up. That's because of state law. The bigger issue here is more of a systemic, and it's a long-term thing that we have to be working on, but it's balancing our tax base, because we love having more residents here. There's well, that's, I can say I do. I personally, I wouldn't want to work in a place that didn't want to welcome new people in, or didn't want to see diversity in people and what they have to offer, families. That's me, and I know the city council hired me because of that viewpoint. So everyone has their own opinion. So I'm just saying, okay, speaking for me, I like that, because one, it can help us get something like a grocery store or more services. We don't have more rooftops, we're not going to get more services like a grocery store. That's where we are right now. So we're working. If people are interested in investing in a business here, it's because they see the population growing. That's pure and simple. But when you get more residents, and we're about 80% tax base is residential, so 20% is non-residential, that puts us in a big hole, and costs get shifted on to residents because we don't have the economic development to balance that out. So you look at the neighbors across Highway 26, their residential tax base is about 40%, non-residential is about 60%. Huge companies there, nice parks, good schools, good facilities, good police department.
You've got a lot of economic development to balance the tax base. We don't have that here. So you need additional resources to backfill what the non-residential isn't picking up. And that's a problem. It's a problem all across the state. For those that have an imbalanced tax base, and when you rely a lot on residential. So going back to what I said earlier, this is a long-term thing we're gonna have to try to fix. It's not just a grocery store, but try to get more companies to move in here, try to fill out the buildable land, get more land to just get some. We don't have to look like Hillsborough, we never will. But something to balance the tax base, though, that's a win for residents, not just the city. It's a win for knowing that, okay, my taxes aren't gonna have to go up because there's nothing to help out with the residential tax base. That's the long answer, but it's tax values don't never exceed inflation.
Well, that's not, I'm talking percentages of what the state can raise. I'm talking about the total number of new homes that are here that are paying those taxes, not how much it's going up.
Mhm.
So our revenue should be about double than it was in 2017. Why isn't that covering at least most of this?
Well, your services have to keep up with that too. Yeah, we have to add. People may move here, but they expect services as well.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. If we have twice as many homes that are paying property tax, why isn't that property tax paying from at least most of this?
I think that's a misconception that clarified to me is that we've doubled our population, but we haven't doubled our homes. So that's
2.5.
I think we have.
2. That's
Are you seeing all the homes that all this over here, over there, that's been the last 6-7 years? That's going in, you're talking about, you're looking towards what's going to be coming on. I would say, because I lived there for 20 years, that the houses about double. So I would assume that the property tax that cities bringing in would double. And why we're asking for, I still think is a little too much, but I can see, you're more stuff, but I would think the property tax that we're bringing in with all these new homes would cover this, or at least most of it.
So all good questions. Maybe what I can describe here will help get it there. I don't know. We'll see. So the challenge that we in any city that relies on property taxes, the challenge in the state of Oregon is the property tax law of the state, and that's Measure 50. And it was approved by voters in 1996. Property taxes were growing really rapidly at the time, and so the voters approved kind of a whole new system for property taxes. That's Measure 50. So if you look on your tax bill and you look at your taxable assessed value, what the property tax rate applied to, it's actually really, really low compared to what your home is actually worth if you were to sell it today. Okay, the average home in North Plains right now, at least the last time we checked, had a average market value of just over $510,000. Okay, sounds about right. Some of the new stuff being built at Bryn Hill, some of the bigger homes are certainly more expensive than that. But if you average it across all the homes in North Plains, it's currently in this fiscal year, the average market value is just over $510,000. But the average taxable assessed value that a property tax rate is applied to in North Plains, the average taxable assessed value of that same quote unquote average home is just $261,000. And here's the reason why. When voters approved in 1996 Measure 50, it did a couple of things, really key things that, a number of years after are the key challenge here. The first thing is that the value of everybody's home at the time, and you were living here at the time, the taxable assessed value of everybody's home was rolled back to its value in 1995, less 10%. So everybody's home at some point, if they were living here in 1996 or they were in Oregon, their home was, their taxable assessed value was reset to a 1995 taxable assessed value. Any new home that's been built since then, including everything that's been built at Burn Hill and out at Sunset Ridge, when it was finished and the tax assessor went to figure out what its taxable assessed value is, every new home since then, including all these new ones in North Plains, the taxable assessed value is calculated based on what it would have been worth in 1995. And then the other thing that has happened that Measure 50 did is not only is everything kind of based on a hypothetical value in 1995, but the taxable assessed value of homes in Oregon on an annual basis can't go up by more than 3%. So the bottom line is that cities and counties, Washington County is going through kind of budget issues now because of this too. But every agency, every city or county that relies on school districts that rely on property taxes are dealing with a situation where costs are going up, like Andy mentioned, for law enforcement, going up 5, 6, 7, 8%, depending on insurance and liability and that sort of thing. But the property tax system that primarily pays for these services is really only allowed to generate 3% higher revenue per year from the same home, even though the cost to serve that home, every single home, goes up by 5, 6, 7, 8% every year. Now, if you take a look at that over a long period of time, that differential gets really big, and that's why some of the numbers look off. I think when you look at them, we're trying to pay for current level of cost and growing level of cost that exceeds the rate of the ability for property taxes to grow along with and help pay for it. And so that's why some of the numbers probably look off. It's just kind of the system that we have.
Okay, I think three questions. Question. How much revenue was the city bringing in say 4 or 5 years ago?
That number I don't have off the top of my head, so I'd have to look it up for you, I'm afraid.
I was wondering what it was, say 2017, 18, how much are we bringing in now?
Yes, I guess I would have to look that up and get back to you about going back in the past on that one. We have
It seemed like you answered my question. You keep talking about property tax only being able to go up 3% at a time, not the amount of homes that have been added to the town bringing in revenue.
Can I try that?
Councilor Page. Let me hear the rest of
I think I have your answer. If you get a slot as an A, theater is man, so people can I'm told I talk quietly. Great. Anyways, so here's the deal. We just saying about 2%. What that is locked at that price. Salaries and services go far faster than that. So if your tax basis is houses, you're losing ground every year. So if you add 150 more houses, then you got to 150 more people, and those needs keep on climbing for cost, and those houses cost and not going up. So the more houses you gain in people, the more it's going to cost you. We need businesses here. Businesses do not use up those services like people do. So we need businesses. So when any say is 80% registers, other places have 40%. They're net positive. So businesses are contributing. We're each house we add, we're losing value. We need businesses here. So there's a lot of property that comes out farmland, which can't control. People, we're gonna build houses, right? Yay, farmers, they're capitalizing, they earned it, they had their time spent there, and they got they were able to build houses and catch up. For the city, each house you buy or each house you have, you do get a bump up. These houses do cost more, so now they have a higher basis. But every year, tick, 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 goes down. So we have twice as many people need twice as many officers. Those go up every year, 5% for officer salary every year so far. You go higher, because inflation is going more, right? We can only get 3% off that basis of the house. Not only the resale value of the basis, which is set back by state law for a lower amount. That, I hope, was answering your question.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I perfectly understand what you just said. I still don't understand why we're not. If we have more homes, if we're bringing in more revenue, why isn't, regardless of whether it only goes 3%, if we have 500 more homes that are paying into the system, should we still have a higher revenue in a city than we did
No.
6 years ago?
Yeah,
It's this math, right? If your service growth 5% a year and your hailing is 3% a year, how fast are you losing money until it's made too much money to support what you need, right?
Yeah.
So service growth 5% a year and your revenue only goes up 3% a year, 2% why? Next year, 4% why? Next year, 6% why? Next year, 8%. In 20 years, you got 40%.
so, the conversation taking place in the audience was basically, just to summarize, yes, with each new home that we have to serve, the city basically loses money on it. Because you have to remember, one home does not equal one person. One home equals 2.5 or 2.6 people. You know, how many people are in your house? Andreas, I met 3. Yeah, Maria, what about you? 5. What about you, Ron? 2. Okay, so you're helping to bring down the average. But maybe someone's moved out. But over the life, the model is 2.5, 2.6 people. And that may be conservative. Some of these neighborhoods with large homes, that could be 5 people. You know, I have a small home. There's 4 of us and a dog. So the other point too is we may have homes that we have to serve that get occupied, but just because of when they hit the property tax rolls and those payments are made, there could be a year lag on that too. We don't get any revenue because of that, because of the timing when a home may be built and occupied. So that's another consideration too, and that's fully accounted for in the 5 years that we're dealing with here. So I guess the moral of this is it's complicated, and it's partly why to word a ballot measure or to try to just give people a service that they want. We almost have to keep it simple, you know, because we have found the more you get into the depths of this, it's impossible. And, you know, it's really hard to communicate that. But these are great questions, and I'm glad that you're asking them. It's good, you know, it's good to share this information, but that is the basic challenge. Each new home costs more to serve than we get back. We go in the red with each new home until we can turn around the balancing the tax base.
How is it costing the city more for these homes?
People per capita. It's not per household, it's per capita. Kids go to the library, you know, more and more people. I mean, more water we have to deliver, more things in the street. It's just a bit, you know, the police chief can tell you here, the more people you have, the more problems you have too, you know.
Yeah. But you just meant like water. Oh, we're paying a water bill.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it? It's costing more to.
But that
provide that water,
yeah.
We're paying for that.
That's just one example. The real things that a government, a city would provide that don't generate revenue are, you know, keeping and maintaining and building, operating parks. Same with the library. Same with police. You know, we're not charging for police. And you know, if you want to. Depending on what project you want to do, what program what you want to do, what personnel or equipment you want, we've been absorbing the costs that have been keeping up with inflation. You know, the property taxes and balancing it. That's kind of the short story there. But it's a lot of what we call general fund services that people enjoy. The ones they enjoy the most: parks, libraries, police. There's no, you know, they don't generate revenue like a water does.
We have now
We have 3.
3.
I say 3, but it's 2.75. Because,
FTEs, yeah.
and I say that because this is one of the beauties of contracting with the sheriff's office is in order to get additional deputies, we don't need to do what a normal agency would do, is hire a full, you can't hire a part of a person.
Yeah.
But here at the city, we can, because the hours, we can actually pay for hours versus a body, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope I'm being clear with that.
Yeah.
So those are the FTEs that we have.
So if we have three, you're 7 to 3 or whatever, what are the other 2 officers' hours?
One works 40 hours. I've adjusted, but in theory, one works 40 hours. And they're working noon to 8, noon to 10, a 10-hour shift. And the other one's working 30 hours at the same time frame, noon to 10,
Okay,
which is like 70 hours. That gives you your 1.75.
is it plausible or acceptable to hire just one more officer to do that 10 to 7 rather than 2?
Well, this is the issue that we run into. Is you absolutely could. There's a lot of things we could do. The problem is you would only be getting that 40 hours. So which 4 days do you want police coverage? And which 4 days are you going to have a problem where you want police to respond? So, yeah,
Shifts.
yes, but that's not how it works. And that's when we work at police work is
Come on, you can work 7 days.
I could, my wife wouldn't be so happy, but police work is in essence, it's a 24-hour profession. And so it's shift work. And so it's constant. Where there isn't, my goal would not to have gaps. If anything, what you really want, is some overlap. And the reason for that is because we all have to go home and we all have to come to work. So what we want is some time to have some briefing between, hey, this is what's happening today, keep an eye out for it. So some of that overlap, so you don't actually get the, hey, going to the office, and again, the home station is the sheriff's office. It's not necessarily here, even though I got to take home cars, that's where it kind of starts out. But you end up coming here and you want to have that passover. So to get true 24-hour coverage, at some point, that would be the goal down the line for me to, I've said that from the get-go, for me in North Plains, my goal would be to have true 24-hour coverage. You really you don't get 24 hours in a day. You really need like 30 or 28 to have that overlap with that, to do that. So that's kind of how that works. And again, you hit the nail on the head there with 7 days a week. Crime doesn't have a weekend. And if it did have a weekend, you can bet it's not the same weekend you have. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, very informative so far, but I was wondering if there's any data available in terms of personality, any sort of trends that we can see, connecting the one the residents, one more coverage with what's the actual need over the past few years.
So,
especially in high priority.
well,
Jim, can you repeat that? Or
yeah, so he's asking what the need is in for police, especially with priority calls or calls in general.
That's kind of trend data, right?
Yes. So North Plains is a small community, and the first thing I would ask is you have to define the need for me. And I say that because how do you put a price on what you believe is your safety and what your peace of mind? And I say that because if you don't have 24-hour coverage, which hours are you okay not having police available? Does that make sense? So I can get you it's not a secret. I could pass all the different information and the downside of the crime data is it's North Plains. So if we get a small spike, it seems like a giant spike in a certain type of crime.
Yeah.
Because it's a wonderful community, and I think North Plains is fabulous. And I think we do a great job of trying to keep the crime down. But if you do get a crime spree like what we've had, where people go and they do a whole bunch of car clouds, that suddenly for that month is ginormous.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is it's without to be the last quarter, it seems like even though the public demand is little bit less.
Yeah.
But that's only the last quarter. Before that, it had been going up. So the last year,
Yeah, that's why.
it had been going up. So it's easy to so, and the other part of the equation is we only contracted in 2019 with the sheriff's office. Prior to that, the wires were different. So right now I'm comparing apples to apples from 2019 on. Before 2019, I couldn't reliably give you what it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It might not have been, not,
Different
might not have been done
dispatching.
the same way.
But this is data publicly available, that's what I was wondering, like historically, of course, we don't want the data from yesterday, but like talking like last year. Because of course you adjust it to population increase and but it still paints a picture over the past 4 years, like I'm not against it, I'm just kind of trying to see, okay, well, have there actually been any worse some increase in the criminality activity here in North Plains for the past 3.5, 4 years, since you have the data, right?
Yes, and I can get that data out. I can't imagine why it would be secret, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
So it should be, it's just a matter of compiling it and putting it together.
No, that's perfect. And I was actually also wondering, like, what are currently the average response times overnight? I guess it depends a lot, like, they fluctuate a lot, but like on average, priority call.
That's gonna be really, I can get some folks to get that information to you, but it's difficult, and it's especially difficult right now. And this last year is gonna totally skew everything, and I say that because the city's been paying for North Plains coverage. On certain days, it's been 20 hours a week, basically, we've been giving. And we've tried to divide that up sporadically through, so it's not the same day every week, but it's virtually the same hours. So this last year is gonna really skew any numbers. So it'd have to be before this last year, when we truly didn't have any. It's not fair to have a North Plains deputy on who responds right away, and also you compare that to last year when there was nobody.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the goal would be like when there's nobody.
yeah, potentially, that would be yeah.
Yeah.
So that within the last year, so it would take some time to get all of that information. I don't have it off the top.
Yeah, no, and that's okay, because I think, so people would understand, like, okay, it takes 60 minutes in high priority call, that would be way more enticing to, support the service. Yeah, not having the knowledge, like, maybe some people can think like, oh, it takes 3 minutes or something to come from, or, but you kind of get the point.
And I want to say too, just about the priority calls, like if we did not have evening coverage or overnight coverage, and let's say you're on a business trip and your wife and your child are at home and she hears noises, right? Or a suspicious person walking around, I mean, she might call 911, but there is a chance that it might not get answered until the next day, or like an officer come out the next day. And that is something that, that has occurred in the past.
Yeah,
Because it's just lower priority.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially people being aware there's no coverage at night times.
It's not that I think you hit something else.
Yeah.
On that is people talk and they know when there's coverage and when there isn't. And so it's different to be able to. Right now, it's a crapshoot. Is there going to be someone, or is there not going to be someone working? And we do our best to try and have visibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just another big question. So like, in the event that we'll hopefully get coverage overnight, and then I know it's very unlikely in a small community like North Plains we have 2 high priority calls at the same time. Would we still work on the same principle where like we have somebody out of town responding to the second call, or how would that work? Right? Because it still doesn't solve, we don't have like 3 instead of.
No, absolutely, because again, even now, right now, there's only one officer working at a time. You still have those mutual aid, and I say that because most of the high priority calls you get are not single officer responsive; they're multi-officer responsive. Yeah, so you're still going to get folks to come and assist. It's going to happen. It happens at, even in say like Hillsborough or in Loa, where there's in essence a lot, I'm using air quotes here, lots of deputies or officers working. There is still need to have other officers respond and to assist. So that we continue that on all the agencies across the county as well. And that wouldn't change if there's still a nighttime deputy.
A good example is, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, the fire station downtown. That's a levy you pay. That's 24/7. They're there around the clock all the time. Last summer or last year at some point, there was a fire up in the hills that they had to go respond to, and then within 10 minutes there was a fire in North Plains. So engines from neighboring, I think it was Hillsborough, maybe Banks, came and responded, and they had the similar mutual aid agreements where everyone's going to help out in a high priority. But if TVF and R weren't there though, you got a fire, structural fire that you want. Yeah, you need someone there quick. Yeah.
At the beginning of this last conversation, we talked about crime trends. It seems like this last quarter has kind of gone down with that, right?
Yeah, but definitely
Is that probably because of winter and criminals don't want to be out in bad weather?
potentially. Boy, it's so hard to say. I don't want to stab at why criminals do what criminals do. But like anything, it ebbs and flows. And traditionally, in my experience, yeah, the winter tends to be slightly slower. I don't think that's necessarily occur less. It's just, like you said, it's a little bit wetter, but it's still happening. And
So that's not something to be happy about necessarily, because it's probably going to go back up when the weather gets good.
So we should hope for more rain, right?
no,
It's not that.
I know. I have a problem, Mark, with you just go back. So I think that the measure, like one of the benefits of the measure is like having the officers responding to incidents overnight that are familiar to the community. And I think like it's kind of two questions here. The first one is like you're talking how we are contracting hours rather than people. So are we gonna have the same officers overnight?
very good question. So the question is we gonna have the same officers? And yes. So what we do is, North Plains is like a special team. And what that means is, other than when someone's sick or someone's on vacation, what we do is we do a selection process. And people apply and people get selected to be in North Plains. And the reality is if they're not doing a good job, they won't be working in North Plains. We will remove them and get someone who is going to do a good job because it's a special assignment. It's something where you get to be in North Plains, not to where you have to be. And yes, the graveyard would be slower but again, it's a wonderful community where you actually get to know people, and it's not one that you have to be. You can spend time and really service the call and learn about the community as opposed to having to. I need to hurry up and get this done because there's 3 more calls holding for me to go over here to do this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's how it is in a lot of the county. Because it's just a higher call volume. Here it's I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit slower paced. It will be a graveyard, but that also gives you a lot of time to really get to know the goings on and start to learn the people that should be out and people that should not be out.
But directly though, we have Chief Jim Haxton, our deputies are Jurgen Barters and Stephen Schutz. We'd get 2 more just like them. They're dedicated North Plains off, and then they share information all the time. It's not some fly by night going through. It's dedicated people here doing graveyard. Yeah.
No. And I mean, this may be the paper, like, so if there's sort of like process, I don't know, okay, bring the new additional officers for them to be the community, or I don't know, like, how they become familiar, is there, I don't know, how they become.
So they're not vampires?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna become familiar with all the troublemakers, but what about like all the good citizens, like, I don't know.
Well, also a good question. He's asking, how do the new deputies become familiar with the community?
Well, there's something that we do, we call it a pass along, so we keep track of, we don't keep track of folks, but we'll pass along information that's pertinent. Let's say we just did an eviction, hey, this should be a vacant property. So we have an electronic version of that, as well as, we talk. That's the beauty of it, we can talk, and it's not just talking about North Plains, but the West End, we call it the West End, right? The west part of the county, which is totally different than the east part of the county. And, it's almost like Oregon, it has, mostly it's desert, but then you have the Willamette Valley. It's kind of like North Plains and the county. North Plains is considered part of the West End. So the West End deputies, along with the North Plains deputies, because we're the ones that cover each other and tend to go to all the same calls, that we end up talking and communicating with because there's a lot of the same folks. So that's what the deputies do to communicate, how they actually get familiar with the residents and the folks that live and work in North Plains. That's just something that happens over time. And each shift makes a big difference. How they're going to familiarize themselves at graveyard can be totally different than what I do at daytime, which is different than what they do it on a swing shift. And that's just an individual that's going to have to learn. I mean, there's some bumps in the road that they got to do, and they're just going to have to learn it.
Yeah, because I don't know, like, I feel like I saw somewhere, some companies have some sort of a meet and greet once a month or something at a coffee shop. It's like, oh, meet your local officer. You take them to my car.
Yeah, and I would love to do some more of that. We need to get a coffee shop. I think that's the big thing.
Well, we used to, and
I do like Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. We can have a taco with a cop. I'm okay with that.
not a bad idea, actually.
But
Yeah.
some of that really is dependent upon when that event takes place and the time of day. Like I said, for me on day shift, it's a little easier. Graveyard, I don't know what we would do for the folks on graveyard, because most people want to go to bed. Somewhere at 9 or just after, and they don't want to get up. Well, I don't want to get up before 7. No, because that's a very good question. He's asking you the shift change. It's really hard on a deputy to try and switch shifts. So we do a 6-month bid, and the reason for that is so you can forecast and hang out with your family. And so if you switch, some agencies do it. I am not a fan of it. That rotating shift, because your body gets used to a certain shift, your sleep cycle, your family, and a lot of folks have family's important. It should be, and it goes without saying, but it really is. It truly is. Your home life balance is critical. And if you had this one week you were working these hours, and the next week it totally screws everything up. And how do you vacation planning, childcare, all the things that's real life that you have to take care of messes with that.
But to Andre's point, and I made that comment earlier, like a vampire, you kind of are, you're out at night while everyone's sleeping. But maybe we'd have to think of a way of, maybe at the beginning, they could do half a shift, and we could do shift differential and cover it, and they could do a school visit or go to a community event, something like that. It would be up to them, because my dad did graveyard shift for 15 years, and he just, that's how he did it. And it would screw with his biological clock anytime he made these changes. But I see your point. It's like, how do you get to know people if they're normally sleeping? So I think we'd have to think of some ways to integrate that.
And I think last one for Andy, so like, just to make sure I understood it right, so like, it's the amount raised by the measure which increases every year. We would use that difference to try to offload more of the city budget's contribution towards police services. That was right.
Go ahead, Bill. Well, this is our time of year when we're doing a budget, so Bill is basically swimming in spreadsheets.
Like in year 5, it's like right now, I think the care rate is like around 53% of the city budget goes towards police services. Take that down to 34%, I think. 34%. And like that's year 1 and 2, but in year 5, we would potentially be more of the city budget, like take that down to 98%. I don't know.
Well, the real honest answer is it would be up to city council every year. And here's why. The levy in the first year is forecast to generate enough revenue to kind of get us the bare bones 24/7 coverage. It's just enough money to assure that doubling of patrol. As the levy, as property tax revenues go up, more people moving here, more revenue, everybody's property tax bills going up by that 3% every year. It creates a situation where council is going to balance. Do we put more money into kind of enhancing and maybe adding some more time of people to fill in any gaps that may occur an hour here, an hour there over time? Do we put a little bit more money into just augmenting the 24/7 coverage? Or is it a free up budget question? So council will kind of balance that out. But the first year of the revenue that comes in, the way the levy rate is set, it should come in to just pay the first year for kind of like bare bones. That's my.
It's overnight coverage.
It's overnight coverage, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for overtime if it's needed, extra time for, covering, going to court and not being in place and having to pay for somebody to substitute out for them, that sort of thing. But the levy rate, the way it's set is the first year, it's 24/7 coverage, but it just gets us there. And as that growth in revenues occurs, council will, weigh how to scale up.
Okay, so the council can decide what to do with the additional, but it doesn't have to go to the business.
But that is one of the council's key jobs, is making those decisions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's deemed a public safety local option levy. But the reality is when they're called optional, you can, 3 years down the road, a new council could come in, new mayor, new councilors, they could say, we'd rather it go to the library or something. But right now, this council's made the choice. We want to get to overnight coverage, and that's why it's a public safety levy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Question. Okay, somebody made a comment in the chat. Kelly. All right. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. And Kelly is not an elected official, so they weren't obligated to say that. So, all right, good questions. We're kind of on the home stretch of everything we had to say here. I'll go ahead and I'll bring us home here. So we're obligated to say what happens if the measure does not pass. We would go back to status quo, 2.75 FTEs, even though the city continues to grow. And a public safety budget that's about 50% of the total city budget. So again, we're trying to accomplish two different things here with more coverage and, less of a large city budget impact. The revenue, the local option levy helps us do that. And then the election information there too. It's obligatory information. Now, some news that I have to share. Ron, you're asking great questions here. This is something we discovered when doing the budget last week. What we have to do, we have a lot of forms to fill out when you're doing a ballot measure with the state and with the county. One of the lines in there, they said, how much revenue would be raised by the measure? This is what you'll see in the voters pamphlet. This is what you'll see on the ballot. So we're making this correction. We got postcards going out tomorrow. This will be on the website and the newsletter going out on social media. What this is the cost of total 5 officers in all of those services. We put in the incorrect total. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said 650,000. That is the correct estimate for how much the levy will raise. So that was a mistake I made in filling out the forms. So we're getting that corrected, letting people know they may see this. That's the cost. But it does show you what the delta sort of is. The levy will raise this much. This is really how much it costs. And then it's the property taxes that we're all used to paying. That's what covers the difference here. So we're trying to make that correction. It's not going to raise, this new levy would not raise that much. This is what it is. And again, we've got postcards going out to all registered voters. This going out tomorrow. We'll see some information
Was that
on
part of
that.
that levies going toward the evidence room and stuff like that?
I mean, it's all inclusive. It's a buffet. It's anything related to police is what.
It's not just two officers, it's police cars, it's insurance, evidence room.
Everything, all in, everything, you know, the training, these guys do so much training. I'm really jealous, honestly. We can't, the city staff, I'd love to do more, but you need it, like I said earlier, I've got many colleagues in this little profession that have stories of things going wrong. And not to say it couldn't happen here, but a lot of times it's deficient training, and that's something that the sheriff's office takes very seriously, taking the training. So all that's included in there.
And if I could add, it sounds weird, but there's also the command structure. Because we get the sheriff, we get all the command structure with that as well as all the research that goes into the tools and the equipment that we use to include the report writings. There's a lot of little things that go in that you don't realize, like the cost of simply changing out a report writing system or switching out uniforms or switching out cars, all of that stuff and the research that goes into it. In essence, that's that one stop. And what we get out of it is a very, I know I'm the chief, but it's a very slimmed down version of a police force. So basically just what you need of the officers and the supervisors to be able to do that. The rest of that, the sheriff's office gets to manage and do that, to include the training of the supervisor. So it's really pretty much a plug and play, and it's pretty dang good if you ask me, for what you're getting here in North Plains. I think it's, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't here before. I mean, I was in the county, but it's been pretty good where you can get not just a brand new recruit deputy, but you're getting a seasoned deputy that's off probation. It's already gone through the hiring process. Because that's another thing that is plaguing police departments right now, is a lack of getting quality candidates that even apply for the job. So we don't experience that in North Plains with the agency with contracting, because if a deputy decides to quit or doesn't make it or washes out, we don't see any of that here at North Plains. What you see is a deputy that's been on the road for at least 18 months before they're even eligible to come out to North Plains. Does that make sense? So you're getting a fully qualified, experienced deputy that even comes out here before they're even selectable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hiring a public works director been a challenge. Trying to hire a planner and hire a finance director. These things are hard. That's one we don't have to worry about. I used to have to hire police officer, police chiefs. It was a pain. I always find they're my person, but we still get to interview them, you know, that they'll fit in here, and there's that process. But we'll see. So I have one favor. I'm not here to tell anyone what decision to make, but I would ask, if you see this number thrown out or something online, or people are really confused, you say, hey, this is what it should be. And it's on me, simple mistake, filling out the form. You know, it's not going to be that much. I do want to set the record straight, and we'll have some messaging going on that tomorrow. This is what it'd be. And you see, though, it does scale. It does scale because it's the regular property tax and it's a levy combined, and that's why it's growing.
So I'm not sure what's going to go out on the postcard to, help clarify this to the folks, but unfortunately that kind of rolls into the fact that everybody just currently looks at the voter pamphlet right now. It's very vague, and just based on that, I wish you the best, but
yeah, this discovered too late
here, so I've got a better understanding. I mean, I've always wanted 24/7 coverage. I mean, without having night shift coverage, it makes us a target, and we've seen that a year ago. Whatever you want to call it, flash mob or whatever, but people outside the community know that it is not controlled at night and it's an easy target, that kind of stuff. But when I read the voter pamphlet, I didn't feel good about it until coming here and seeing, the realistic this and that. A lot of it has to do with. My God,
Exactly what I originally brought up was,
10 years ago or more, when, the powers that be decided that, hey, we want to double our, double our population and everything. Unintended consequences is being a bigger, sleeper community doesn't help our budget.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
And another big point, and Bill could probably write an essay about this, but
I just did.
yeah. What happened there too was it wasn't the community that made that choice. That was the state of Oregon in a bill that said we're getting rid of.
Yeah, they took away our.
Yeah.
Make a vote and say, we don't want that in.
So it was sort of forced upon the community, and we've had to reckon with that. And again, like I said, I'd rather embrace it and try to build a community, and we'll get more benefits out of it in my mind than not. But there's things we have to fix to accomplish that too. So yeah.
Yeah, so again, I don't know what's going on with the postcard, but
It's exactly what you saw there. Yeah.
truncated little version is like, hey, we've got ourselves in this situation and here's where we're at, here's what we can do to get us out of it.
Well, and go at the very beginning, it's the laws are very clear that it's not our job to necessarily go out and try to go door to door and explain that to people. That's just, we have to be very by the book. Now that questions you're asking, then I can elaborate and talk about that stuff. But it's to kind of tell that story, it's not something the Secretary of State wants you to do. That's the job of others to do that. And whether it's community members, whether it's organizations, whether it's
I wouldn't be against the law or rules, regulation, whatever, to put in the measure what the money is going to. All it's in there says 2 officers, which is like we were saying, like 300,000 per officer. Well, you're talking to a couple more cars, an evidence room. People who didn't come to this meeting tonight ain't gonna know that. They're gonna see 2 officers. We're saying that's a lot of money for 2 officers. I hope it passes because we funded it.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
good luck.
that's a great point. He's talking about the verbiage, and we debated how to do that. Ultimately, we landed on doubling the hours that officers are on patrol, and then but there's nuance there, like we're saying. What does that come with? But the ballot people won't start voting for another week. I would just encourage folks to kind of chat about what they've heard or what they've learned.
Well, and the city council, we've actually created a PAC, policy, political action committee. And we have a postcard that we're working on that will go out in the mail as well. And on that postcard, it'll have some of the messaging that you might be looking for. And, based on the questions that you're asking, it'll be different than the city's piece, but it will be, we're working on that. And again, I think we're gonna try to be able to get that out next week. And if me, the other counselors too. If there are people that you think that we should be talking to, or a group of people that you want us to talk to, we can make ourselves available to do that. And in addition, I know that there are several of us that want to go door to door and talk to people where they are and answer their questions, and that's a lot of work, but there are a couple of us that are eager to do that. But if you, want us to talk to people, or want us to talk to a group of people, or, church members, whatever, let me know.
I wouldn't know a specific group of people. We got 8 people here.
Well, I mean, in your social circle,
Another,
that's what I mean.
over
Yeah.
3,000 people that ain't here. They know this information and needs to get spread out more than. You can find.
I do have to after that from talking to neighbors, I think people are getting confused, and like just from coming here, it just makes so much sense, but might be helpful with door to door. I can
Bang for the buck, talk to the HOA leaders. Put them on board.
I'll try to do that again. This was one of the points of this, and talking to some members. Just do something that has Zoom, because they meet on Zoom. it's always a challenge finding which night to do it, but I'll circle back with them and see, just give us 15 minutes on your regular agenda, but that was trying to do.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll get like, talk to them, or talk about something, like, hey, we can announce about the rest of the way we talk about this. I did it for the gas tax. I had nobody talk to me, I was all by myself. So hopefully it's not come talk to me again, but if not, I got that one. So. Anybody want the microphone?
You're okay now?
Are there any questions from folks online on Zoom? Sure. 5 minutes. Hey, an hour and a half exactly. Well, if not, we're at 90 minutes. People have obligations to go to. I'll go ahead and stop this. I'll just say one, grab something to eat, either here, mill around or take it with you to go. And two, just thanks for coming and thanks for the questions. And again, if you talk to folks, it is a small town, so word travels and it's helpful to just use any means we can get. We do a lot of things digitally. We have a newsletter, but word of mouth is always, any advertiser says it's gold.
Are you recording this?
This is recorded.
So it will be visible for folks to watch it then.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ron. Thank you,
Thank you.
Andreas.
And Graham.
And Grant. Thank you for being here. Okay. Good night, those online. Thank you for joining.